Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. At this time, everybody's in attendance. Deputy Warden will be back in the room in a minute. And at this, we'll now pause to seek guidance. I'm now going to read the mission statement for the municipality, and mission statements to provide, promote, or facilitate municipal services that meet the community needs while preserving, supporting, and enhancing quality of life for all. First order of business is the approval of the agenda. Is there any additions or deletions?
Yes, I have one. I got a letter at 4:02 from a Casey Melanson, and she was asking why she was not on the agenda. She said that she sent a letter on November 6th, one to Linda Gregory, which doesn't directly ask, and one to the Municipality of Digby. She said it sent it to you. And I'll read it, I guess, because I thought this would be, at the very least, be in correspondence. I've kind of never seen a letter disappear like this before. Dear Municipality of Digby, my family members, friends, and neighbors have been to some of the CERMAC meetings.
David, wait a minute. Before you read it, we'll add it to the agenda and then we'll discuss it.
I don't know why it wasn't on the agenda in the first place.
I don't know, but we'll discuss it. So I'm going to add it to the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also going to add an in-camera personnel issue. So 5.2. Is there anything else? Nothing else? Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. We're now going to do delegations and presentation, and tonight we have a delegation from Martha Curtis and Dr. Curtis. Can I have a motion for second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome.
Okay, I want to just thank you all for allowing me to come and speak on at the meeting tonight. I've got a couple of purposes in wanting to speak with you. First of all is to update you on the history of what we've done at the clinic. Second of all, to explain why the clinic is closing. And the third is to determine what is happening with the records and the patients who are currently at the clinic. For those of you who, all of you know, we came here last October and we were excited to be here. We had been in negotiations with the municipality and with the village and Nova Scotia Health Authority to come starting in August, and we finally got everything approved. But since even before we came, it was one battle after another, after another, after another. And those battles have continued while we've been here, and they're still going on right now. When Dr. Curtis was looking at coming here, he was told by Nova Scotia Health Authority that unless he was willing to go into Digby Hospital and participate in the on-call rotations there, that he could not be given an alternative payment plan. He had to go fee for service. And for those of you who might not understand how doctors are paid, they're paid in either two ways. They either are fee for service, where they have to charge for every single visit that they get, or they get a certain set salary a month, regardless of how many visits they have, and they have to have a minimum and stuff like that. So when they said that they wouldn't give him, they said, you're more than welcome to come and practice in Weymouth, but you have to do it fee for service, which meant that he had to see as many patients as he possibly could in order to make his monthly billings and stuff. And we got here on October 1st, and in 13 days, we revived a clinic that had been dead for 4 years. And in the first 12 days of seeing patients, he saw 179 patients, new patients. That involved patients filling out a 5-page registration form, asking all their medical history and medications they were on and everything else like that. All that information had to be not only discussed in the 15-minute appointment, but it all had to be entered into the computer. And these recycle buckets here, I'm a kind of a visual person, so I brought them along just so that you would see. That's probably only a tenth of the paper that we have shredded in our office. And all of those are patient record forms. Dr. Curtis he was working 14, 15 hours a day, every day, including weekends, evenings, putting the data into the computer. And in the process, he has actually got permanent damage in the shoulder from all the computer data entry work. And he was working fee for service. He was spending so much time doing the data entry that he didn't have the time to actually tell Nova Scotia how much he needed to be paid. Nova Scotia Health, he wasn't able to keep up on his billings. And so when we met with them in February, explained the situation, because at that point we were looking at having to possibly refinance our home on the island or sell it so that we could just survive financially, because it just wasn't working out fee for service. They said, okay, we will give you a APP and we'll give you it retroactive back to October. So we continued to operate from February to June, basically. We operated on an alternative payment form. In June, when they were getting ready to approve his next APP contract, we got a letter that said that because he had concentrated his appointments, he was seeing 30 patients a day for 3 days a week and taking the other 2 days for administrative paperwork, time just to breathe and stuff like that. They came back and said that that wasn't enough. He needed to be working 4 days a week, even if that meant he only had 4 or 5 patients a day. He needed to be in the office 4 days a week, available to the patients. Not only did he have to be there for 4 days a week, he had to take on another 50 to 60 new patients a month. We had already taken on 500 patients at that point in less than 9 months, and they needed to. They would tell him which patients he was going to see. If they got someone in the ER that needed a family doctor, they could say, Dr. Curtis, you're taking this person. Or they could say, here's a list of people off of the 811 list that you have to see. These papers here are papers, these are all the people in Weymouth alone. These are the people north of Weymouth, and these are the people south of Weymouth. They have put their names in it, Weymouth Medical Center, to try and get a family doctor. And every single one of these people was going to be put off on the back burner so that he could take 811 people and people that Nova Scotia Health Authority said that he would have to take. In addition to dictating his hours and the patients he would see, they said, in addition to that, we're going to send you have to report to someone in Nova Scotia Health Authority once a month. We're going to have somebody supervising you once a month because we don't think you're working hard enough. And he basically said, no. He got a letter from Jimmy Glass, who's the executive director for physician services, physician compensation, thanking him for, I would like to thank you for your time and dedication as a physician to the community of Weymouth, Nova Scotia. We would like to acknowledge the termination of your contract effective July 1st. We appreciate the commitment you provided to your patients. Jimmy Glass has a PhD in agronomy. She has no medical experience whatsoever, and she's the one that's dictating what doctors will be paid in Nova Scotia. So when we got that, we started the process. We sent out a notice to all of our patients, and I realized that there's only one person on the council that is actually a patient of Dr. Curtis's. But I have a copy of the letter that we sent the patients, as well as a copy of the letter that we were planning to send to all the specialists. And Nova Scotia Health Authority, Department of Health and Wellness have lied to Dr. Curtis since day one. When we were planning on coming here, they have an incentive program for repayment of student loans. And that was one of the major factors, that and the incentive that was provided by the municipality here were the main reasons why we came to Nova Scotia. We got to Nova Scotia, he went to apply for the student loan reimbursement, and in every single document that they have, they say we will pay you for the years that you attended medical school, so long as there was no remediation. Before we came, he explained to them that he went to 5 years in medical school in the States. Would those 5 years be covered? They said yes. Then we get here, he goes to apply it, they give him this calculation. Oh no, we're only paying for 4 years. And we said, but it says here 5. Well, policy dictates that we only pay for 4. So that, in addition to what we had heard from, that was heard before he tried to renew his contract, and then when he went to renew his contract, he said that was just sort of like the last straw. And so we notified our patients that we were going to be leaving, and we've been battling with Nova Scotia Health Authority to try and find out what's happening with the patients. Their suggestion is that we put all the patients back on the 811 list, and that they go back and try that they go back on the list for needing a family physician. We were told that we could select 50 patients from our 500 that we could send to Digby. We could send a list of 50 patients to Digby, and they would prioritize them and assure that they were there. The rest of them had to go back on the 811 list. We were told we could send a list. When we actually went through the process to find out how we refer these high priority patients, instead we get back a form, and I'll give you a copy of this as well, but a full page form that Dr. Curtis has to take the time to write down everything, all the medical conditions, all the information that is in his electronic medical record has to all be transferred to one of these forms so that we can transfer our patients to Digby. And so we were talking, and we were like, the best thing that could happen to pay honor to all the work that Dr. Curtis has already put in, and all the work that still needs to be put in to the system, is that if the village or the municipality could take over the electronic records and manage them so that when you did get another provider that comes in, they don't have to go through and put all this information in there. And the other, because Dr. Curtis is required by the college to store those records for 15 years in some place where patients will be able to get access to them and stuff. But the physicians in Yarmouth and several other places in Nova Scotia, when they've closed their business, their practice, they send them off to an electronic storage place in Quebec somewhere, Ontario, Toronto, someplace, and the patients have to pay $100 to get their records back. We were hoping to try and avoid any of that by keeping them local. They're all electronic, so they can be accessed from anywhere. We just need to say to the patients, this is where you can go to if you want to get a copy of your records. And so about a month ago, when I was here at the last meeting, I gave a proposal to Jimmy, and I also gave the same proposal to Irwin for the village to consider, and asking them to basically take over the EMR so that the patient, all the records would be there when a new provider comes in, so the patients, if they were lucky enough to get on with somebody else, they could go by the Williams Medical Center and say, I'd like my records transferred to Digby or to Clare or to wherever it is that they happen to be getting. And so the village met And I have a communication from Irwin. I said, just touching base with you to see if there was any decision made on last night's village commission meeting regarding hiring the receptionist and retaining the records at the medical center. Please keep us updated. And then he responded back, we found that the reception is too rich for us. I will be talking to Jimmy about it. However, we would have no problem paying the $350 a month to keep the records if we can do so legally. And then I put, it's good to know that the village will pick up the EMR fees. This will make it easier for the patients and future providers to access the records. Our last day of seeing patients is November 26th, which is tomorrow, and hope to be packed up and on our way by the weekend. Could you please give me a call to update on your communications with Melanie Mooney regarding the nurse practitioners at the Weymouth Medical Center after we leave? There are so many things that need to be done, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I called Irwin today to try and find out whether or not he had the opportunity to talk to you regarding hiring somebody to just be at the medical center to collect the mail, to update the records, because right now Dr. Curtis has been sending, up until like tomorrow, he's sending people out for referrals and sending out people for tests and for labs, and all those things are going to be coming back into some place. And in order to keep the records complete, we'd like them to be able to be added to the EMR and kept updated, but you need somebody physically there to do it, even if it's only 1 or 2 hours a week. And so I called him to find out whether or not he had an opportunity to speak with you about it. He said he hadn't, and he said, oh, by the way, we can't handle the EMR either. So we've been telling the patients, based on the information that we had been provided from the village, not to worry. Their records were staying there at the municipality. At the medical center. And when and if they found a provider, they could stop by, send us an email or whatever, and we would send them out. Now that we've been told that that's not the case. So what I'm asking tonight is it possible that the municipality could pick up the cost of the EMR, which is about $400 a month, and if whether or not the municipality could have somebody there 1 or 2 hours a week just to sort of life support type thing. We revived the clinic. It was dead for 4 years. We came in. We started it back up again. Our biggest fear is if we close the doors, those records go off to someplace. Nobody is there except for the nurse practitioners who are on the Nova Scotia Health Authority. That the doors will never open again for another doctor there. And also, and I have several other recommendations that that we had, because we were a little bit, we wanted to make sure that the patients were taken care of. And so these recommendations are to try and keep the patients that Dr. Curtis has worked hard for, have been cared for, and to lay the foundation to take care of these other ones who he hasn't been able to see yet. Nova Scotia Health Authority has the ability to assign a nurse practitioner to the Weymouth Medical Center. They have agreed that there's going to be 2 nurse practitioners that are coming there 1 day a week starting in January, but they will not be seeing Dr. Curtis's patients. They will be seeing patients off the 811 list or their own patients that just happen to live in Digby. And we, as I said, we leave hopefully on Friday or Saturday. And Dr. Curtis has to let the college know where those records are going to be. And the last thing we want to do is send them off to an electronic storage where the patients are going to have to pay $100 to get their records back. But we have no other choice if we don't know what's happening. And so what we would like to ask is that we could get a definitive answer from the council tonight whether or not they would be willing to pick up the EMR charges, and whether or not they would be willing to put somebody in the clinic for, even if it's 2 hours a week, to pick up mail, add fax, feed the fax machine, because all this information is still gonna continue to come in while Dr. Curtis is gone.
Martha, I just want to bring you up to date on just what I received today. Actually, came in from Irwin, and he had put a email off to Melanie and asking to talk to them more about Dr. Curtis's proposal that was put forward. And he says in it, we would gladly pay the $350 a month to keep the records in the center. This is the village. And then from that, the reply back to him was that I've done some follow-up on your request, in particular what can be done with the EMR data. I would like to talk to you about next steps. I think it may be of value to meet with you and Linda and others as needed to review the recommendations from Dr. Curtis. And that was brought to Melanie from way back when, right after we found out that you weren't going to be leaving. You guys were going to be leaving. So, and I've spoken to Gordon, our MLA, twice to ask an update from Melanie, because we haven't heard anything back from Melanie as a municipality, and we're not really. I know personally, I'm not happy with the way things are going either. I was hopeful that the records would be handled in a better way than they are right now, and I was kind of hopeful when I heard this morning that there was at least the village is interested in keeping the files in the clinic. So we have to follow up and find out what's going to take place with that.
Point of question, if I can join in just for the 2 seconds, I know probably not proper procedure. When did you talk to Erwin today?
When did I talk to Erwin today? It was probably around, well, when I had a schedule conflict, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to come tonight, so I called Erwin to find out if whether or not he could come to the meeting and present all this on my behalf. And that's when he told me that like 11 o'clock today.
Yeah.
And he told me that they had decided that it was too much because they might have to, who knows when there's going to be another doctor there, and they might have to be paying that for 2 years.
Well, by this, it sounds like they're willing to do the records, but they're not willing to pay to have a staff person. That's my understanding of this. So, like, we need to talk to the province more about this, or we need to sit down and talk to our MLA more about it, because council did discuss this already about the request that you brought forward when you came before, and we weren't in a position to do operational costs for the clinic.
Yep.
We've got demands on us from all over the municipality to provide operational funding for various entities, and we've never been able to do that because of the cost. And like, we've got the same request coming from the Bear River Health Clinic for funding for operational costs. We were able to provide capital money and to help with the clinics, but we haven't been able to provide with operational funding.
Okay, out of curiosity, when Dr. Curtis came, you were given him a grant,
Right.
Incentive, $50,000, which came with a 2-year return of service, which we've already been in communication with Linda about the repayment of that grant. That money was designed for physician support for health care at the thing. It was also talked about that we could possibly use that for administrative support, whatever Dr. Curtis deemed necessary. Is it possible that when Dr. Curtis repays that money, that some of that money might be able to be redirected back to the clinic to cover the 2 hours a week?
I think council would have to have a discussion on how they would treat that, because it depends on how they want to treat the funding with regards to, if it gets back to operational funding again, we're going to set ourselves up in a bad spot by saying we did it here, but we can't do it here, here, and here. So, but that's not to say that it can't be looked at under a different light.
Okay, the problem that we're running into is that we told everybody back in August that we were going to be leaving, and we have been excluded from all conversations with NSHA about what's happening with our patients. Even like, I have heard hardly anything from Melanie about what's what's happening with the patient. I understand that there was a physician recruitment meeting to talk about how to recruit. We were never even asked for opinions on what we saw happening to the patients after we leave. I mean, we didn't come here, we haven't invested the last 14 months of time, energy, effort, everything to just walk away from it. We came here because we wanted to make a difference. And we're leaving and we don't want to just walk away and let it die.
Mhm.
But we're on time frame. Like I said, Dr. Curtis needs to know what's happening with those records, and he needs to know.
Right away.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, and I understand that. Like, we haven't talked to Melanie or Nova Scotia Health Authority any more than you have.
I know.
And that's been the dilemma. And I've reached out to our MLA, because that's the avenue that we have to operate, and we haven't had any response back as to what the status is or what they're doing.
And probably the biggest disappointment when we announced that we were going to be leaving was the reaction. Yeah. It was just like, oh well, nothing we can do about it. And that's not true. The people of Weymouth, the people of Digby, you deserve to have health care.
Mm-hmm.
You deserve it. And I think it's time that the people start speaking up. And I know that I've been told the Nova Scotia Health Authority doesn't like to be told what to do. But I think it's high time that somebody starts telling them what they need and what they need to be doing. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, I mean, Nova Scotia Health Authority is the scapegoat for the Department of Health and Wellness. Because the funds come from the Department of Health and Wellness. The letter saying that they weren't going to renew Dr. Curtis's contract came from the Department of Health and Wellness. Health and Wellness uses Nova Scotia Health Authority as a scapegoat. And I know the frustration with trying to get anything. We ran into a whole bunch of other stuff with the clinic, which is, I don't have the time to go into, regarding Nova Scotia Health Authority's involvement at the clinic that's owned by the village. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, I know I've already gone past my time. I have copies. I don't know if you were able to share the full proposal that I shared with you, but I have copies of that as well as the letter to the council members that we talked about, as well as a proposal that we had put forward to doctors in Nova Scotia, but we're not funded on regarding electronic records. Mm-hmm. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you leave, I just want to thank you for coming here. I'm sorry that things didn't work out, and it's very frustrating trying to deal with some of the bureaucracy we have in this province. And I talked to you a couple of times about this, and I really understand where you're coming from, and I really feel that I'm disappointed as well that we haven't been able to get a designated nurse practitioner to cover Weymouth until a doctor is available, because of the work that you've done. To see these patients not have to be orphaned again, it's setting everything back by a couple of years and more than that, really. And I really appreciate everything you've done, and I wish you all the best going forward. Thank you. Yes.
Martha, the records that you presently have on patients, are they in patients' accesses?
No.
So what about after you leave?
After we leave, they will either be at the Weymouth Medical Center, or they will be in our electronic.
So if they're at the Weymouth Medical Center still, so they be accessed?
Yes, they just have to show up.
Well, the real problem we're running into, can I jump in? I just want to, I'll bring it down on point real quick. The real problem we're having is it made the decision, the college wants me to tell them where those records are and be stored by Friday. That's when they have to do a go or no go on my license. And they get very nasty about these things, and to be perfectly honest with you, for the next day or two, because I want to file it. I'm going to be packing a van on Thursday and Friday, not corresponding to the college. The real problem is where those records go, how they go, big problem, okay? If they go to the record storage place, it's $100. 500 people, potentially, it's $50,000 over the area that goes to Toronto. Just let me honest with you, it's that simple. That's if everybody gets them. Most people, I know that, according to some people, please don't want to say anything, there's no poverty in the area, but I see plenty of poverty, okay? And so I know most of my patients are not going to be able to afford $100 for the records, okay? Which means they'll go without, which means cares will be more fragmented, okay? As far as the records are concerned, we can't hold on to them in BC and try and send things back and forth. It's just totally crazy to think. We're going to have a fax machine here, getting faxes into it. Somebody's going to dial all those up and send it for the next 5 years to Martha so she can scan them into a system that doesn't make any sense. Okay? Other things that could happen in here as well, none of them really make sense other than either have somebody there or, quite frankly, just tell everybody not to send the faxes anymore, to shut the place down completely, and to basically ship the EMR. That's basically what this is pretty simple. Okay? Yeah.
Are all those records in the system? Or
500.
It's 500. And, of course, I'm finishing things up, so it won't be available necessarily to send for a month or so. The other problem to think about is that Martha and I have the knowledge of how to actually access that program and work that program. Whoever we're getting in to help right now, we're in the final days and hours of being able to train somebody. When we're gone, it's going to be expensive, and you have somebody have to learn how to do it, because we're not going to be here. They're going to have to get that knowledge of how to get the information, how to get into the system, which is not a problem. We're not going to have a problem giving it to them, but it's not the same thing as having one-on-ones with somebody sitting right next to you, right? So this is part of the problem we're looking for as well.
As well as mail that comes in. We were told by the post office today when we stopped there that, unless we have,
A designated key holder,
key holder for the clinic, all the mail that comes into the mailbox is all gonna go back to sender.
Okay.
And so we've got some real logistical problems. I don't want to say we don't care about our patients as an interim thing for a month or two. We could do it, but there's no way in the world I want to drag this around for 5 years and people are dying and I don't know what's going on. If you don't have a license, and I know a couple of, one of you is definitely in the healthcare profession. If I don't have a license in the province, all I'm doing is collecting paper. Okay? I can't treat anybody, I can't do anything meaningful for anybody. I'm collecting paper. That's all I'm doing.
And in the proposal that we sent forward, basically we were trying to convince doctors in Nova Scotia that they needed to support the EMR, and that would be the best thing that they could do to recruit a physician. And it fell on deaf ears with them, but from experience, it's not going to matter whether you take them out on a whale watching trip or you give them a big dinner or anything else like that. If they can walk into the office and know that they've got a receptionist there that's going to take care of their appointments and their billings, and they have somebody, they have all the records, all they have to do is call the patient up and say, come on in, visit with them, and all the information is there, it's going to be a whole lot easier to recruit a doctor in the replacement. Otherwise, they're coming in, they're going through the 14 hours a day, 15 hours a day, using data entry and mind numbers, but they come into the same physical limitations that Dr. Curtis has.
All right, well, we'll see what we can do, and,
Okay.
all right.
And I understand your dilemma. If you support one clinic, you've got a problem. I'm not sure if Digby Neck is being supported the same way, because I think Digby Neck is probably the closest to what we've got, right?
We don't, like, we don't have any operational funding. We only, like I said earlier, we just give money for capital grant money.
Yeah.
And, we've got a lot of demands from different organizations wanting operational funding, but we,
Maybe not as operational, but maybe think I'm getting close to as maybe bridge funding.
well, it could be,
Maybe an idea for 2 to 4 hours a week, just enough, so that we can get the stuff and we can coordinate things. And if you don't get a dock in a year or two, the demand for the records will decrease in that period, I'm sure.
Mhm.
And on the flip side, if you do get a dock,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can absorb that in some fashion.
We'll have to discuss it and see what we can do.
Okay.
All right, thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of October the 28th. And the motion to approve.
A motion to approve the minutes of October 28, 2019.
Seconder. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is unfinished business from the minutes. Is there any unfinished business from the minutes? Hearing none, we're going to go on to the CAO report. The first item up is the meeting date reminders. And December the 2nd, we've got a meeting with TIR at 5 o'clock and then the bylaw policy at 6. Is there any questions pertaining to any of the dates, or is there anybody giving regrets for any of those dates?
The only other meeting that is not included in there, I believe there's a Police Advisory Committee in January. I think it's January 8th, but I'll include it in our committee of the whole meeting online.
Action items, previous minute meetings. I don't think there's any with it. The next is the update on the capital projects, 1920. Any questions? Okay.
We're hoping that, Development Nova Scotia will have some sort of announcement for the year end. I heard that on the radio this morning. Regarding application or proposals for the response to the application.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody last week, and it's getting ready to come out. So, also, the tidal rain gauge, tidal and the tidal gauges, rain gauges. Do we have a timeline when that may start going into the water?
These are progress, or the last I saw Terry's report. Terry and I were supposed to meet today, but we're meeting tomorrow morning.
Okay.
I think in his last report that the committee of the whole was they're starting to do some construction.
I don't know if they're on site or it's here yet.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Financial reports. I have a motion to approve the October payables of $893,070.40.
So moved.
Seconder?
I'll second it.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
The next is the income and expense report from October 2019. You've had a chance to review it. Any questions? Can I have a motion to approve the income and expense report?
A motion to approve the income and expense report of October 2019.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next is the update on the strategic priorities work plan. I don't think there's any changes really too much from last month. Like was just stated, the rural internet, we're hopeful that we get some information on that right away. And has the construction started on the roof at the airport?
Yes, half of it is done. I think from the moment they dropped the steel out there for the roof, the wind has been not so much the other weather, but the wind. But yeah, so no, they're off to a good start to have that wrapped up before Christmas.
Call tomorrow.
A couple of days, got a couple of little window there.
And a lot of fishermen are getting there tomorrow, it's gonna be calm.
Okay, we're gonna move now on to the standing committee items, bylaw and policy recommendations. First recommendation from bylaw and policy was a delegation and meeting with council bylaw or policy.
I'm thinking 10 minutes is a little short.
Yeah,
I don't think we've ever had one
I
last
don't
10 minutes
think, I
ever.
don't think anybody's ever done a presentation in 10 minutes.
I'm
We
thinking,
haven't held them to it, but
No, and if you're not gonna hold them to it, then fine, but like, I would think either 20 or 30 would be, you know, somebody's gonna take the time to come
Yeah,
here,
if you go 30,
do a
then you're an
presentation,
hour.
get their stuff together, maybe they deserve at least 30 minutes.
I would keep it at 10, like you said, we've never really kept them to it. You do 30, then you're into an hour, and then an hour and a half.
I wouldn't mind 20 is what I was thinking. Because like, we've never had anything less than 10, sorry.
To me, where the important part is the piece that we're gonna ask questions, which is never part of that presentation.
additional.
That's what I'm wondering if we're confusing, because they may do their 10-minute presentation, but we may have another 20 minutes of questions and answers, is how I looked at that.
Yeah, I don't ever remember too many times when our question and answers outdid the presentation.
Yeah, there's usually very few questions. I'll make a motion to change it to 20 minutes. Maybe that could be a compromise in between. It doubles the 10, and we still won't be, militant about holding people to it. It's, make 20 as sort of something to
I do
shoot at.
15, but that would be most, I mean,
Well, if we're not holding them to it.
you know, we have.
No, but the thing is, a lot of times we have two presentations on one night. And if you make it too long for the presentation, then we're gonna be cutting back on the time for questions. And I think it's important that we ask those questions.
I think it is too, but I think they deserve more than 10 minutes.
I'm not disagreeing with you,
Come
but I'm
here
just
and
saying, you gotta
Get the
find,
presentation all together and present it and all that stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, our time is also valuable, but it's not,
Not
once a
just-
month.
No, I know. Or if we wanna extend it, then maybe you only have one presentation per council meeting. It depends on how long you want your council meeting to go.
Yeah, if you keep it at 10, you can do 2, and then people can get in faster.
Our council meetings are third of what they used to be.
No, but I guess what I'm saying is, you want them to go 3 or 4 hours long, so.
Well, I don't think that extra 10 minutes would.
No, I'm not, I know, I'm just asking the question.
I feel like.
But you gotta get everybody's-
I'd like them to have enough time to.
So getting back, okay, Deputy Warden,
If we decide on a plan, no problem, but I still think there should be up to 2 presentations. Otherwise, it could become too long for people to wait to see it.
I agree.
all right?
I would like it to stay for 2 presentations.
Presentations, 10 minutes each, I like that.
So,
How we would-
let me go around the room then. Councilor Ross said 15 minutes.
15.
I can live with 20.
And you gotta make a motion.
So we have a suggested length of 20 minutes for a presentation.
And do I have a seconder? Any other questions? All in favor?
Nay.
Okay, the next is, we still have to go and, move the bylaw and policy recommendations. That was just a motion made to make the, change in the policy.
Do I move these individually?
Yes, each one's gotta be done individually.
I guess I'll move number 2, AB 1008, Human Resource Policy Amendments.
We haven't done the first one yet.
AB 1007, Delegation and Meeting of Council, as amended by my motion.
Do I have a seconder?
Second it.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
The next is to the Human Resources Policy Amendments.
And this amendment is basically that it would be reviewed every 3 years instead of every 1 year.
please.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we adopt, the Human Resources Policy Amendments, AD 1000-08.
Seconded.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Approved.
So I'll move AB 1009, streetlight policy.
Do I have a seconder? Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. The next one is the media relations policy.
I move, COM 1500-01, media relations policy.
Seconded.
Okay. And the change in that. I'm trying to find it.
I think that's a new,
Oh, that's the new.
That was a new one.
That's the new policy.
it combined, a few other policies, so just
Tighten it
basically,
up.
yeah, tightened up, or just talk about who, communication protocol, when on behalf of municipality.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Approved. The next is the heritage property owner grant policy.
I move HER 3500-02, heritage property owner grant policy.
Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, on the second page, we were supposed to change under pink. We should change the color of the exterior of a church, and we're gonna put heritage property or something.
Did that not get changed?
No, I saw that too. Under paint.
Oh, the second line.
Second
yeah.
line.
Yeah, we had mentioned it last time when we were going over them, but
Yep.
it never did change.
No, probably this copy just went from one to the
Okay.
other, but I have it, so,
Just,
no, thank you.
we're talking about heritage property.
Is yours different than ours?
No, that's the one that's in the packet.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So, can I have a motion to approve this policy as amended? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Tax exemption bylaw 2019-02.
So at the bylaw and policy, meeting, when we reviewed, I had brought it forward as an amendment to our existing, and just adding it to Schedule A. But in my direction report, I indicated that because the authority for this tax exemption comes from specific legislation and not from the Municipal Government Act, we have to have a standalone bylaw. So that's basically doing the same thing as the amendment, only it's a standalone bylaw. So this would be a recommendation for first reading.
Recommended for first reading, I move for first, recommended for first reading, is that what I said? Tax
Bylaw
exemption,
number,
bylaw number 2019-02.
Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Is there any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. The next is funding for the Digby Ground Search and Rescue to purchase a vehicle.
I so move that we accept the recommendation, for the funding of a Digby Ground Search and Rescue to purchase a vehicle. And it doesn't say here over,
over 4-year period.
4-year
yeah,
period.
over a 4-year period. I didn't see it on the agenda. For a 4-year period.
Yeah, 4-year period.
I think it said 4 years.
Okay, no, I was just reading this piece.
Yeah, it's under here, moved and seconded to recommend to
Okay.
council that a loan to the Digby Ground Search and Rescue be approved to the amount of $25,000 to purchase a vehicle for search and rescue, paid back over a 4-year period through an annual capital grant. You've moved it, second? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is New Year's levy. This is a motion that was being recommended to come forward. Council approved New Year's levy at the municipal building on January 1st, 2020 from 2 to 4 p.m.
I so move.
Do I have a seconder? Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Next, we're going to go on. There's no committee of the whole recommendations for tonight. Under business items 5.1.
I got a question.
Yes.
There was a, were we supposed to do the thing about that? That was in here for,
Yeah, we skipped that, we didn't see it.
It's not in here.
I know it
No, I
wasn't
think it
on
was
here.
$100, so it wasn't any.
Okay, so. we
Oh,
have to-
yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to be there.
Okay, the Bear River and Area Health Community Center got a funding request. This request came from the new administrator of the clinic, to me, and I forwarded it for tonight's business, and this is a capital request of $1,500 to help with the cracks in the foundation in the clinic, and it's what we do for them, and we haven't given them any funds in this period, so.
I'll make a motion for $1,500. This is coming out of the grants for organizations budget, or whatever.
So the grants for organizations is around $4,000. Two of that 2,000 of that 4,000 was set aside for the roadway cleanup. I think council had decided to do that. So there's just a little about $2,000 left in that. So that'll leave us for the rest of the year.
How much?
So that's 500 left, will that be for road cleanup, because there won't be much road cleanup going.
No, there's still 2,000, well, council had approved, that we set aside, that we add $2,000 for road cleanup, any community group that wants to do road cleanup, that's in there,
Well, it's still there.
that's the $2,000.
Because the project's that's not gonna get used, not likely before the end of March.
No, but that's not part of our normal community grant, that's a separate item that we added.
If this is for capital, right? We have to give it out of our grant money, is what my question is.
Yes, because it's not capital money that the municipality
Mike,
is expending on
all right.
our own property.
Then my question is, would we do 750 and 750?
Maybe, I don't know, but they gotta do the.
It's
repair work.
according to when they're gonna do this foundation work.
Yeah, it sounded like, they said they gotta fix it before winter because of the,
Leaking,
Ah,
yeah,
yes,
it's leaking now, so
yeah.
it's gonna be done.
My concern is if there's no money left for anybody else, I agree this is important, but I do have a concern for others in the area. And they're saying they could have gone through their insurance, but they're afraid the premiums would rise. I could see us giving them at least $1,000, but to leave us with 500 till March, and we still have 3 months to go, and there's always something that comes up, I'm just concerned. I mean, I agree we should be helping any way we can, but my concern is if we give it all and have nothing, it puts us in a very precarious problem.
Council can also, as Councilman said, free up, I mean, they can make a motion to change from that $2,000 to decrease that amount and add it back to grants. That's another option.
Dr. Ross?
Have they asked an applicant county for?
I have no way, I don't know.
This is our,
Yeah.
they would not ask for
To show
that.
you that.
But if we can do that change if we have to, I have no problem with that. Yeah, then if someone comes, we know that there's some money there, I have no problem with it. So if it's been moved, I will second it. If it hasn't been moved, I will move it.
It's been moved, now you seconded it.
I will second it.
Okay, is there any other questions? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Okay, the next is,
I'm being a pain. Shirley was their chairperson for 25 years. Could we send a letter or something just to thank her for her years of service for that many years? As that, until I read the letter, I had, I had no idea that it had changed.
I knew she was going to step down, but I didn't know that it was coming up this year, but.
But she had been saying for a while she was thinking about it, but it's like, you don't believe it till it
You wanna
happens.
make a motion?
I would so move that we send her a letter of thanks for her years of service from the municipality.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Do we know for sure? Is it 25 years?
It says that she stepped down after 25 years of loyal service, so I'm just going by their letter. And I know she's been there a long
Took
time.
our big pension.
Yeah, actually, it went back and forth between her and the other Shirley. Remember years ago? I mean, like Shirley Robel has been involved with the clinic, but I think the other, I can't remember the other lady's last name right now, but there was two Shirleys for years.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna move on now to 5.2, and that's David, that's you.
Yep, I got a letter. It bothered me a little bit, let's see if I get the.
Just, I wanted to just let you know that you had sent me something on this, and I replied back to you last week, and saying that I didn't know if it could make it onto the council agenda, because I didn't know the status of how full it was, but it could possibly make it on a committee of the whole meeting.
Oh, you never sent that email.
Well, I'll look it up here for you.
Hi, David. In regards to FCDA, this isn't the FCDA.
The FCADA, that's the one that about getting on the agenda? That's the one you talked to me about?
No, this isn't.
This is a different one? Well, then I'm not aware of this other one.
Oh, okay, it said that it was sent to you on, I'll give you the exact date. Sorry about this, guys. Sent a letter to my counselors Linda Gregory and Warden Jimmy Alpine. However, I don't see them on the agenda for tonight's meeting. I sent them on November 6th.
And it was a letter?
Yep.
Mr. Warden?
Yes.
I spoke to Ms. Melanson. I had called her husband and talked for an hour, and I felt everything was fine. I talked to her this afternoon after David had brought it up that I hadn't got back to her, and she said, oh no, she had nothing, she knew I had got back to her. She asked me, and I said, no, usually the letters, unless they're something that I can't answer, then we put them on, but otherwise, like I've been dealing with some emails, and I've been trying to answer people, and there's been some others that I want to check out before I responded. But I did speak to her. That's why I came back in a few minutes later, because I wanted to make sure that there wasn't a misunderstanding on my part. So, just to let you know that.
Well, I would think that if I got a letter asking for individual statements from somebody pro the salmon cage proponent, I would assume that would definitely have to come in, whether or not my own personal views on
That
it.
had nothing. That wasn't in my letter, David.
I got all kinds of personal emails today, I can forward it to you.
Well,
My letter wasn't.
What about if they ask specifically, here, I'll say it, try not to laugh. What if they specifically say, I'm asking today for individual statements on the record from councilors who are supporting the Cermak salmon cages and the reasons why? What if that happened on one of those letters? Would you not send it in to us?
Didn't get the letter, but
I'm being
No.
surprised all the
made any
time.
decision, I don't have any facts.
That isn't what my letter said at all.
I think it's important to understand that there's two letters.
Yes.
I'm just not sure everybody is, so two letters.
Yeah.
Two letters sent on the same day by the same individual.
Mhm.
So Linda's had a different ending than this other letter.
Yeah.
that she was
Another one
circulating
says,
to us.
Dear Municipality of Digby, and the other one says.
Dear Linda
And
Gregory.
it's dated November 5th.
And one says about statements from the councilors, and the other one is.
I
Yeah,
can see
mine
why
did
a letter
not
like
say
that some
statement.
people might not want to have it on here. And I'm getting bothered by the whole thing. I'm getting I don't feel a lot of trust, I'm telling you.
But David, question for you.
Mhm.
Anytime somebody asks us and they want to come before council, I don't think we've ever turned anybody down to this council as long as I've been here.
Mhm.
So whether
That's
people,
what this is.
but there was an ask, didn't you say there was an ask to come
We're
before
answering a
council?
question, yeah.
Well, as far as the answer, we can't answer that question right now. We don't have enough information to answer that
Yeah.
question.
I can't, until I heard some information, the presentations, and that.
So why wasn't it put forward? Is that why?
No,
It was-
I'm just telling you, I don't
disappeared?
recall seeing that
I
letter.
never got the letter.
Oh, I
So,
know it wasn't. It says it went to the warden on the 6th.
well, I'll have to check and see, but I never received no letter that I can recall. So, the fact is, though, if the person did write a letter and I did get it, I'll send back to them that they can come before council if they want to present to
You
council.
don't answer questions.
I'm not going. Well, my answer to that question would be I would not make a decision on whether I was for or against it till I had enough information to base my decision on, because we don't have that information provided to us. And another thing is too, this municipality does not dictate whether or not a cage goes in the water or not. It doesn't go in the water.
But we do have our staff working with.
No, we don't have our staff working
Then why
on that
did-
file.
We didn't have Terry phoning around, trying to find spots for Cermak? Because I think there's someone in the room who told me something like that, not too long ago.
We had a staff member calling around to try to find space for salmon cages in the water. Is that what you're referring to?
No, they're actively, yeah.
Well, I'm not aware of that.
Helping them.
I'm not aware of that. Anyway, the fact of the matter is, anybody can come before council and express their concerns. Council can listen to what the people have to say about it. As far as council saying how we feel about a project, this council has made decisions over the years on whether they supported a rock quarry or other items that were controversial. And decisions were made, but they were made after we had facts and after we had information provided to us.
That's what I'm worried about, information being provided.
Well,
Not that content, that letter clearly should have been tabled for council. I would argue both of them. And if I get any letters about it, I'll be sending in as information on it, because aren't we deciding what our constituents want? Wouldn't a letter that constituent sends in regards
I can't submit a letter
like
here.
that,
I can't bring a letter forward if I haven't got it, okay? So if I get a letter, I'll share it with you. Okay?
I will write back.
I'm not saying it wasn't sent. I said I haven't got it.
Okay.
So now I don't know where it was mailed to, so I'll check it out.
Okay, I will as well.
Mr. Ward?
Yes.
If I get a letter and there's a request, I of course would bring it. But a letter sent to me and me responding is what I thought was appropriate, as we've always done.
Right.
Like I said, I have not answered everybody's email yet, because I
More than
wanted
one?
to go back and check on a couple of things. It has been a long time. I need to check, because when time goes on, you don't know, that's why I wanted to
If you
check.
about this, I would like to know about it though. I think that's a reasonable thing, and I think that I would assume that
So
I would like to know as well.
So you're telling me anytime that we get an email from
About a contentious issue like this that goes in.
No, I want to make sure that I'm understanding. You're saying anytime I or any of this council gets a letter
I want to see
from,
if it's involved in
excuse me
sanitation.
till I finish speaking,
Mhm.
on anything, I'm supposed to forward it to council? What happens to the people that are calling me or concerns over stuff that, like, I get calls all the time and I call TIR because they don't want to talk to TIR. So am I supposed to forward them their email? I just want to make sure I'm understanding, because I feel I have always forwarded if there's a question that needs to go to council.
Well, maybe I could read that letter and we can discuss, because we didn't get a chance to, because I still haven't even had a real good chance to even look at it.
But the thing is, I have to agree with what the deputy ward said. If a letter was written to her personally and she replied to the person, that's between her and the person. If the person wants to come to council, they have the willingness to, and they want to do that, they have every right to do so. So as far as the letter goes, it's like that letter I'm quite sure was treated like any other letter that would go to any councillor here. If a constituent wrote you a letter and asked you for something, or asked your opinion on something, and you replied back to that person, does that mean that the rest of council is going to know about that?
I think there's a vast difference between a letter about a contentious issue that has big repercussions and somebody having a TIR issue like gravel on the side of the road or a pothole. I think there's, especially with the history of this issue, and we've been talking about it, and me being repeatedly unhappy about how information is coming out, that I would think that Linda Gregory would pass on letters like that. And I wouldn't have to find out about it from a third party who wrote me a letter asking specifically why it was not on the agenda. I am allowed to ask those sorts of questions.
You certainly are.
And I think that there's a substantial and clear difference between a two-sentence letter and a letter that goes multiple paragraphs in regards to a major issue that we are in the process of as far as I can tell, pushing. And I'd like to know, I think that that's deserving of everybody seeing it. And especially the person that wrote it seemed to think it as well. Maybe they're wrong. You should send them a letter and explain to them. Maybe
I've already talked to Ken.
if they ask me.
So I want to make sure we're clear. If we decide that anything that comes through, we're
Not
going to send.
anything, major issues.
I'm not going to make the decision if something's a major issue. I just need to know what it's going to be. And maybe this isn't the time or the place, but I just want to make sure, because I have always thought I was doing my job.
Well, I think you're capable of understanding the difference between a minor issue and a major issue.
If it's a major issue, then that letter should have came to council as a
One
whole,
did.
as a whole, okay?
That's what it said, so she wanted to know why, and I'm trying to get the answer.
I'm just saying, if a letter came to council, for council, then it would be brought up here. And it would be shared between all council.
Well, I hope that in the future that's what happens.
So-
And you say you're getting a series of letters? Is there
I've had a few, yeah, and I've had a few calls, and I've talked to some fishermen.
I'm glad to know that.
You know, I don't usually discuss who I've been talking to. I don't think people need to hear every little thing that I'm doing with fishermen or with whoever. But I do agree, if someone wants me to bring something to council, I will be there first. But that isn't what you told me on the phone.
Okay, I will pass on that information to her, that's not what she told you on the phone, that you wanted to know.
That she just, yes.
It's funny that she emailed me that.
Well,
So, but
I'm
she told you
just,
something completely
I'm
different.
just, because I said to her, are you real? She said, yes, yes, I know you talked to my husband.
Yeah,
And they were quite pleased with what I answered. So,
if that's how you wanna play it, fine.
Wait a minute.
David,
That wasn't polite.
That was not
I
right.
withdraw
That's,
that.
okay,
Yeah.
because you should apologize for that, because she just got done telling you, she talked to the lady that you're speaking about, and the way you said that is if you don't believe what she said. Now, she had a conversation with the person. Now, and if you don't like it, then, okay, fine. That's your opinion. Keep it to yourself, please, because that's not appropriate.
All right, it's just a direct contradiction of my letter.
But she just got off the phone with the person as council was starting, okay?
yeah, I purposely wanted to
Right.
make sure.
Anyway, anything else on that?
No.
Okay. We're gonna move on to information items. There's no correspondence for tonight, no general information items, no advisory committee meeting reports or other council committees. Joint intermunicipal committees, you've got the minutes and reports for the senior safety June minutes and the October coordinator report. Any questions? You've got the Tideview Terrace September, the minutes. Any questions for that? That agenda, or I mean, those minutes? None? Waste check, November meeting notes, and June, July, August, September, and October waste check connections. Any questions? One question, Deputy Warden. EPR, what's the status right now?
I'm sorry.
EPR, what is the status with extended responsibility?
Right now, we're still working towards having it happen, but you have to have the province on side, and the province is not on side yet. They keep saying they're looking at it, that, you know, it's a good idea. Even though you keep saying it's already paid for, and it will not cost us anything, it's still not there yet. Because we're already paying for it because it's being done in other provinces. And like, for example, Procter & Gamble does not say, for Nova Scotia, we'll take that 2 cents off. They're charging it. Even though they're not doing it in our province because it's not mandatory. There is some more meetings coming up. Actually, we meet again with Waste Check on December the 9th, I thought it was. It could be the 10th. It's a Monday. And we will be discussing ERP again there, because we thought we were going really well, and now it's suddenly stopped again. It's like the plastic bags, you know, they're saying that they're going to ban plastic bags. Now, the industry is saying you've never even consulted us. So we don't even know where that's going. So, yeah, there's huge concerns with the ERP, because we thought, you know, that it was actually finally going to happen.
Okay.
But it's sort of taken a back step again.
Well, I know NSFM has some of their priorities as well, so it's kind of escalated.
Yes. And deputy
So I think
CAO.
The other thing that the province has indicated, so New Brunswick is currently evaluating their entry into the EPR program. And I think that is slowing down. I think that the
They wanna
province
do it
has
together?
indicated they want to wait, which, as Deputy Warden just indicated, we were feeling like we were getting very, very close coming out of summer. It's starting to sound like we're a year out, I think,
Yeah.
is the latest wording from the province.
And what's scary is, if we let another province take over for us, we're gonna be the losers, big time.
No, you don't want to see that happen. Second question, it's more for staff than it is, how much longer on our contract for, with Queens?
I would need to look it up to answer that 100% accurately. I think there's at least 5 years, either 2025 or 2027. Those are the two.
It's a 20-year contract.
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
I think
I thought there was
there's-
about
there's
7 years
5
left on it.
years, because it's starting to, not so much from our point of view, but there's some expectation that the Queens, I don't believe we're the only unit that had signed a long-term contract with Queens at that time. And as other options like the Chester plant are getting underway, I think it will be interesting to see what Queens, whether they're going to invest in more long-term contracts or what's going to happen. I think we'll hear more on that in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'd like to see you bring up at Waste Check is to have more discussions on what the future of handling waste in Nova Scotia is gonna be, and that's like looking at new technologies on how to handle your waste. And
Okay.
gasification, to me personally, is something that I feel that we really seriously have to look at. And we've got a 5-year window still in our contract. Hopefully, maybe technology could advance enough that could be an option for us.
Okay, we are going to have a joint meeting, and when we do, our waste check director is going to be coming up, and we're going to be discussing some things that are happening for that, and just so you know.
The joint council meeting?
Yes, at the joint council.
Well, possibly you can take it back to Waste Check 2 to see whether or not there's an interest by Waste Check staff to do some research on where we're going in the world with gasification. Because I did a little bit myself, and there's a plant in Ontario and there's one in British Columbia. And
They've probably got lots of information, because they've been doing a lot of work on that type of thing.
all right,
The problem is, without being rude, there is a lot of long-term contracts in this province with different places. And until those contracts are done up, finished, we cannot do anything. That has been made very clear.
that's correct, but those contracts are all going to come up around the same time for renewal.
In 5 to 7 years, you're going
Right,
to find them.
and if you ever were going to put a plant like this in Nova Scotia, you'd only have one for the whole province.
Mhm.
And so you'd have to start planning today type of thing for the future.
Yeah, and Deputy CAO, please. Didn't they talk about that at the upper end of the province, that that's what they were looking at?
There is some talk.
Yeah.
What Gus is gonna come talk about is the efficiency study that the province just finished up, the 3 to 4 year study that's been ongoing. So we talked about efficiencies and tried to have some discussions about where it's going. However, I think it's fair to say that recently, certainly this government hasn't been totally on board behind gasification. I think they feel the pressure from the unit to solid waste models, or landfills. But it certainly is a topic in the report. I think the report is on the other side of 300 pages that Gus was coming around to present it to council in a more manageable presentation. And that's definitely something we should share on gas.
I will make sure this is on our agenda for December the 10th.
All right, thank you. Is there any other questions for a representative on Waste Check? I said, is there any other questions? Okay, we're going to move now outside boards committees, the Digby Area Tourism Association, the October minutes. Any questions? We're now going to go then to councillor district activity reports, and I'm going to start with Councillor Tudor.
Yeah, I've been busy. It's that time of year for the fishermen, so I've been taking people who want jobs and matching them up with people who need workers. So that's what I was doing right up to the last second today. got my last guy a job at the fish plant, which isn't as good as pushing, but he's a newbie, so it should work out. I was on the CBC talking about living on islands dependent on ferries. As you know, there's been some difficulties on islands in regards to the wharfs, the slips being repaired. Maybe not difficulties, but they have to do it, and of course everybody has their lives and their medical appointments and things like that they have to deal with. So it is difficult. Freeport, one of the commissioners of Freeport really took the lead on that and was able to extend the notice somewhat that we're getting. So a big kudos to Cornelia.
Do you want to speak a bit more about the meeting that took place here?
Pardon?
You want to speak a little bit more about the meeting that took place here regarding the?
Oh yeah, I got that here too.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, we had the 3 villages for the ferry approaches project. Mr. Peachy from TIR, we were expecting a few studies to been completed, but unfortunately, in the shuffle of the jobs, he does not have. Didn't have them, but we're hoping to get them in the next couple of weeks. I said I'd give him a couple of weeks and let's send another letter. I also had dinner with him later on that night, and it was very cooperative, and he was pleased with how things were, what we had produced and shown. He did not know how far along the project was, and he was surprised. So a little disappointing, but at the same time, Mr. Peachy seems extremely capable, and I'm sure those studies apparently were done. There was a couple of retirements, especially for the fellow for the bigger study, and he just retired a few months ago, so they expect to be able to do the studies quite soon. This is something that we do that monthly medical talk. I feel like that if every month, myself, Brian Bowerman, Jimmy McAlpine, when he can fit in, and the MLA, and several people, including Melanie, who are on that phone call. And I found it absolutely fantastic and I'm telling this to you, for solving all those little problems that come along. With a couple of politicians on it to hold their feet to the fire. I've gone from completely angry all the time at the health authority to feeling like that there's a real communication going on. And just last week, I felt there were some worries about keeping the office open for the entire week, and I felt like we were able to solve that problem right then, right there, so it didn't even become an issue. So I feel strongly that would really benefit the situation that Management is in. So I just sort of throw that out there. Also, I'm continuing my teeth plan. I've been hitting everybody up, anyone I can think of. If somebody is poor to the federal numbers, I can't remember the exact numbers. I'm sure you guys come across them, it's like 19,000 or something like that. They will do the teeth for $50 an hour, and I've been doing up forms, writing them in, and I've also, in talking with some other people, one of the churches is willing to pay for the $50 an hour. And I'm going to expand that to the Legion. I've been talking to a couple of guys at the Legion and want to put the stack there, and I'm sure the Legion, they're very interested. Remembrance Day, of course, the real big one. I say that to the last. Went to Remembrance Day in Little River. Usually I go to the Remembrance Day ceremonies in the islands due to my grandfather. He's a World War II veteran, but you have to go all over. And so I went over to Little River. It was very good. It was very quiet. It was quite different from the island one. The island one's much different. And so afterwards I went to the dinner, which it's about a 5-6 hour affair, the island one, so I was able to attend that one and make it back to the dinner, where my grandfather nicely received a 45-year Legion pin, but that's only the Legion on Freeport. He was in charge of the Legion on Westport for 20 years before that, so it was more like a 65 or 75-year pin. Good. They would be 75 years, yeah. So, That's some of it, and a bunch of little calls and running around. They get, oh, wood. I got somebody 4 cords of wood. They had no wood at all. And I went to another guy, dropped off food, and he's elderly, no wood, period. He had all he had for the house was a baseboard heater about this long, and his income would be under 10 grand. So just mention you guys, it's good to pop around, and if I might add, I would be willing to put together a list of all the little forms and government programs and provincial ones that I have, including things like the charitable ones like Colebrook, and do a package for everybody, because I find I'm constantly hitting my bag and constantly refilling those, and they're really handy.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Manzer.
First thing was the NSFM conference in Halifax, there were 3 days there. The Volunteer Firemen's Awards at the Digby Fire Hall, I think it was 3 years a week or so ago. The Bob Powell's retirement gathering over at the Curling Club last week. And there was we met with TIR, their department heads and staff and stuff at the ABCC last week. Then there's a retirement supper for Bob down at the bank for staff, board members, and some of the former board members. Tree lighting at the Siskiyou Landing Saturday night, Christmas trees, and Remembrance Day ceremony tonight.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ross.
We did the 3 days at NSFM in Halifax. Came back and did Remembrance Day at the Barton Church. Very nice ceremony. I also went to the firemen's dinner, and went to Bob Powell's retirement party at the Curling Club, and then we met again at Walk by the Bay for his retirement dinner with staff and council. I also been working on some stuff with constituents. The big thing has been the mail in my district. That got resolved last week.
Was it Sherlock Ross?
It's still ongoing. They're in the midst of hiring a new mailman for the area. Probably some, and yours too, Linda. And that'll get rectified. So the mail should get back to normal within I'm hoping a month. I get calls every day, emails, lots of stuff. We found if anybody has a tracking number and they haven't got their parcel, you can contact the post office.
I can tell them where to go to pick it up.
Yeah, don't say that. The investigation is still ongoing.
Oh, no, I'm not saying, I'm not saying where it is. I'd like to have some of mine back.
Well, if you have a tracking number, I can call Jason, and he's been pretty good at getting some stuff, so, but that's been really busy. Other than that, I think we have so many things this month. But yeah, that's been the bulk of it. It's been busy.
Thank you. Deputy Warden.
Okay, I did want to say that the Canadian Biosphere Reserve had an AGM, and I attended, of course, via Skype. And we're looking at how we can manage across Canada to make biospheres better, for having some money to work to do the projects that need to be done all across Canada. So that is coming. I went to the CERMAC Fishermen's Information Session back in October 30th, because I had never spoken or heard, and I wanted to hear them. There was a group of fishermen that were there. I also attended the NSFM conference. I also was asked to speak about the concerns with oil checks or looking for oil in George East or on the banks, and what could happen, and the concern of what could happen around. I attended the Remembrance Day service, and always at the Remembrance Day service, My dad is remembered, as well as my cousin and two of my uncles. They are remembered actually in Rossway, my two uncles, and my dad's name is down there as well. From there, we did the fire awards. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I've already had people come to me and thank us that we did this. So I was very impressed that people have come back and thanked us as a municipality that we have recognized the firemen. So just to know that did go over well. Of course, Bob Powell did and has retired as of the 15th of November. We have hired a new person, but until it's made public, I cannot give you that name yet. They will be starting on the 9th of December. I had the privilege of going to the RCMP headquarters and their training facility with the RCMP advisory group, because that's who it ended up being. And it was it was a fast day. It never stopped, but it was so interesting. And they used to, after they'd say, okay guys, we got to stop, we got to go to the next one. But listening to what they're doing with the dogs and the bombs, and what they're doing to drugs, and what they're doing, you know, with just the opioids in this province. It was pretty scary listening and watching. I actually got my bucket list wish that they set up so I could actually use a taser, and I got it right on. So I was super pleased with that. I've always wanted to try a taser.
I thought you were gonna say, I always wanted to taser me. I thought you were gonna say.
Oh, no, I asked if I could have one of the RCMP officers, but they wouldn't let me do that. Because I said they've had it before, they should have it again. But anyway, I got to use the dummy, and it worked. But the information, which I'm hoping they're going to send us out, some of the stuff is so good to be brought back, and we will be discussing it at our advisory meeting. I also did the Seniors Day and pulled the tickets and reminded everyone next month is the Christmas one, and they have to call in if they want to attend, all that type of thing. I also have had some meetings with some residents over different various concerns that I'm helping deal with. Also, I have been working on some of the heating programs that are out there for people with the Salvation Army and the different ones, which has been a great help. Otherwise, the only other thing that didn't mention was we did do the dinner for Bob, as that was mentioned. Bob did really well. He didn't cry a lot. And he will be sorry with us. I mean, he is so good. And I feel sorry for the person coming in to take him over, because they're gonna have a hard act to follow. They really are. And otherwise, I would say everything else is I've dealt with.
Thank you. For myself, before I read mine, I just want to recognize Deputy Warden Gregory for serving 25 years on Municipal Council, and she received her Long Service Award at the NSFM conference, and that's quite an achievement, and I want to congratulate you. Also, I want to mention that this Sunday is Christmas Daddies, so watch for it. Maybe you'll get a pledge.
Are you talking to doing pledges?
Yeah.
So am I.
4 to 5.
I'm doing 4 to 5. I'm doing 5 to 6.
You're doing it right after me then.
I'm doing 2. I'm doing 7 to 8 and 5 to 6. Yeah, there's an hour in between.
Okay. So for myself, since the last council meeting, it's been a busy month. I on October the 29th, I went to Halifax and met with the Premier, with the Mayor of Digby, the Mayor of Annapolis County, or no, the Mayor of Annapolis Royal, the Warden of Annapolis County, and the Deputy Warden from Clare. And we went up to discuss the Upper Clemency Park with the Premier and senior ministers in government to talk about the viability and sustainability of the Upper Clements Park. And on the 30th, the next day, I had a meeting, the Western Crown Lands Advisory Committee, and from that, found out that they're going to do a 30% cut on a piece of land back on Mill Road, which I've mentioned to council. And we were supposed to meet on Friday, but Mark, the gentleman from West 4, Marcus, he ended up coming down with the flu, him and his family, so that's been put off, and it may take place tomorrow morning, we're not sure yet. So where it's in Councillor Ross's writing, I've been in contact with him about this, and we're hopeful that if we don't meet tomorrow, then it'll be next Monday. So, but we're going to go back to see how they're going to do the cut and how it can be least disruptive to the trail. I also attended the conference in Halifax from NSFM. It's always a good conference to go to. You network with your colleagues, and they have training sessions throughout the few days that it takes place. And also the business of the organization happens, and our new president is Mayor Pam Mood from Yarmouth, so she's in this part of the province. On the 12th of November, I'm jumping around. On the November 11th, I also attended Remembrance Day services. I went to Bear River, like I always do, and Smith Cove in the afternoon. Both events were well attended, so it was good to see the number of people that are coming out. On the 12th, I had a meeting here in this room. JAGBA had an update on the building committee, on the status on the building, the community center, center of excellence that they're trying to build. They've hired a property manager now, or project manager, not property manager, project manager, Colliers International. They're an internationally renowned company, very well respected, so they're going to be doing the lead on this job for them. I was kind of hopeful to see that this thing would be completed by next fall, but the way they were talking, it didn't sound that promising. So hopefully it can move along quicker. Once again, like everybody else on council, we attended the fire service long service awards, and I thought that was a really special event that we were able to host. When you've got someone serving 30 plus years in fire service, they definitely need to be recognized, and the more you can, when one gentleman had 60 years service in fires, he didn't attend that night, but he wasn't able to make it, but still 60 years is unheard of in volunteerism today. Attended Bob Powell's retirement and spoke there on behalf of the municipality. Once again, I've known Bob since before he came to Digby. I've known him back when he was in Bridgetown, and Bob's been involved with recreation all his life, and he's definitely going to be missed. You don't fill those shoes very easily. He's garnered a lot of respect throughout this province, and he's probably one of the senior recreation directors in this province, and very, very knowledgeable. And I really hope Bob has a good retirement and gets to go fishing a little bit more.
That's what he volunteered to do.
What?
I went into the seniors' day, he was volunteering too.
Oh, that's good.
Already. Oh.
Well, I think he said that at his retirement that he was going to do that.
He was going to do the December one.
Oh.
But he decided he better do the November one too.
Oh, okay. All right. And I attended on the 19th Western Counties Regional Library Personnel Committee meeting, and then last week I was in Halifax on the 20th. I went to a session on climate change impacts on a board, like how a board should be looking at climate change, and I thought it was a really, really good session, and put on by the Institute of Canadian Directors. But it just gets your mind set around how we have to start looking at, and we are. And I mean, like I say, like, you know, like with the tidal gauges and everything, that's a good start. But the fact is, it's got to be on our radar as a priority for our municipality, because it's coming, and there's, you know, all signs of it's already there, and the impacts we're going to have on the villages and the communities down on the islands and in Weymouth and Bear River. We've got a lot of communities that are at risk, and that's just from rising sea level. That's not counting everything else that's going to take place possibly. They did talk about there's a lot of challenges with it, but there's also opportunities. So there could be business opportunities, like not to take away from the impact, but there's nothing to say down the road we can't have companies set up in our community that can measure risk and mitigate it, like, you know. So we know it's coming. It's just a matter of how do you address it. And there was a panel discussion, and there was a gentleman from Eskasoni First Nations that spoke, and there was a lady from ESG Global Advisors in Halifax. It's a new company started up. Stephen McDonald, who's the CEO for Efficiency Nova Scotia, Efficiency One, spoke at it on a lot of ways we can do it is just by cutting back on how we use things. We can reduce, and just cutting back on energy costs. And also the lady that spoke, the guest speaker, Myrna, that spoke at the TIR dinner that we went to, she spoke at this event as well, and spoke about what they're doing in Liverpool with their company down there on the cannabis and using aquaculture, and it's a closed system where the water doesn't go out into the bay. And so, and actually I want to mention too that I think we're really fortunate that we have the opportunity to be able to attend these dinners with Department of Transportation, senior management. We're we're the only ones in the province, I think, that get this opportunity. And, you know, it's really making it a lot easier for us to, you know, when you get to talk to a senior manager responsible for what's going on down your way, I mean, you can't buy that. I mean,
That's fantastic.
So I really appreciate Deputy Minister LaFleche putting that offer out to us and inviting us to go to this dinner every year. This is the third year, I believe we've done it now. At least the third, maybe more.
I did it when I was working.
So then it's been quite a few years then. But for Paul to come down here and take the time to talk to us and really have his whole senior management team there for us to ask any questions. I mean, and you know, I was really appreciated the fact that we were all there. Our council was all there. And I look at Annapolis County, they had one representative.
I was shocked at that. I was like,
and the town didn't have anybody. And so really, I really appreciate the fact that we understand the value of that. And actually, we're also very fortunate that we have meetings with TIR, like when the senior management come in here locally and talk to us. They don't have to do that. But for them to do that, it's really nice because we can then pass on the concerns of the community directly to them. So anyway, so that's everything that I have on that. So at this time, do you have any questions for us pertaining to what we spoke about tonight?
No, I don't think so. I was just learning. I've never actually been to a meeting before.
Well, we appreciate you coming because we don't normally get an audience.
Usually a lot duller than this.
Really? Duller than this? No, just kidding.
Oh, jeez.
No, I'm just here. I think that I might be with a group that's going to present at another time, and I just want to hoping to
Sure.
see how the meetings are run.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for coming. At this time, we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Oh, well, before we do that, I forgot to mention, the bicycle racks are coming off of our buses on December the 1st, and they'll go back in the spring. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that. I didn't have a chance to send that email out today.
Right. We'll take a 5-minute recess and then we'll go in camera.
Okay.
Thank you.